So, here interviewing Philippe Lacôte for Film Africa. Thank you so much for being with us today. Philippe, how are you? Tuning in from Abidjan.
Yeah, I'm fine. I call you from Abidjan. Yeah.
So happy to talk to you about your film, La Nuit des Rois, The Night of the Kings. Congratulations on your Oscar nomination too. And really excited that it's coming out this week, this Friday, right? This 23rd.
Yeah.
Amazing. So I have a few questions for you. There was so much in the film, so many different themes that really spoke to me, especially having spent 3 years of my life in Abidjan as a child. And yeah, I really think there's so much to ask you about, but let us start. Something that really fascinated me with the film was how many different cultural influences are in the film. So not only Ivorian, but you have this, Scheherazade element. You have this Greek chorus element. You mentioned this Brazilian film, Cidade de Deus.
Yeah.
Different cities in Abidjan. You mentioned filming in Grand Bassam, I think.
Yeah.
You mentioned the Akan people, with the influence
with
of the
the queen
and that legend and that history. So for me, I was really fascinated about how you drew in so many cultures. And even as a child, you mentioned watching snippets of films from Bollywood to Nollywood to... So if you could just tell us a bit about how all these cultural influences came together in your film.
First, thank you. First, I will say that I'm a mix. My father was French and Laotian, and my mother is Ivorian. So, and I grew up in Ivory Coast, but Ivory Coast is also a mix of all West Africa. You have different communities from Burkina Faso, from Mali, from Guinea, from Nigeria, from Benin. So when you grow up, when you live in Ivory Coast, it means that you live in a small West Africa. So we have a lot of influence. And inside Ivory Coast itself, we have 64 languages and 5 big groups. And all these big groups have history because they come from Ghana with Queen Poku. They come from Mali. We have a part, half part is Muslim, half part is Christian, and 50% is Muslim, 50% is Christian, and 100 is animist. So we live in different contradiction, but for us it's not a contradiction. It's a richness. It's a richness. So and especially with this background, I try always to say a lot of stories in one story. It's my way of working, and I spent a lot of time to understand this material, which is not easy in stories, and also in this form, because I use archives, I use different elements, formal elements. But I will say that it's like a collage. You spoke about Scheherazade, of course. I took this cliffhanger, not to finish your story if you want to survive. But there's also Jean Genet. Jean Genet is very important because Jean Genet wrote maybe the best page about desire in prison. So when I speak about sexy, the transgenre, when I speak about roman, how they prisoners they desire is stories. It's I think about Jean Genet, but it's also Les Maîtres Fous of Jean Rouch. When you have all these dancers like a trance. Yeah, so it's my way of going to take something in different direction and try to make one story.
I think it's great. And also, a really good story, the elements are the same in every culture, of a really compelling story. I was really fascinated to find that so strongly in your film. My background is England and Eritrea, but I was born in Thailand and I grew up in Abidjan. So the most powerful stories, the most powerful magical elements is present across all cultures. So I think you did that really beautifully.
Thank you.
So speaking of prison, so it's based in La Macar, and you have quite personal ties to this prison. Your mom was a political prisoner there. A friend of yours came out of the prison and told you about this tradition of nominating a roman, a storyteller, for each evening. And then the cast are mainly former prisoners, you said, who helped advise you on how to make the film believable. So how did it feel? How did it feel working in that space? So you used poetry and theater and film and the storytelling to give this kind of contrast between the prison and then this escapist magical kind of portal. So how did it feel? How did your mother feel? How did your friend feel when you were telling these stories about La Maca? If you could just talk to us about that.
For me, like, when we speak about usually when we speak about African prison, it's to say that conditions are very bad and it's real, but it was not my goal in this film. And usually when we speak also about prison in the world, it's to say they are bad guys, they need more punishment, or they are good guys, we need to make better condition. My goal was to observe the prisoners, the prison as a complete society. With his code, with his law, with his beliefs, like Red Moon, like the chief must kill himself. I wanted to build a complete society and observe this society and observe how this society will move, how with this society will choose a new king, a new chief. So a succession, it means that, so, and what it was very important for me also to say that the prison could be a place of production of stories, a place of production of imagination, of poetry. It's not only safe places, beautiful places, official places. Poetry comes from everywhere. And it was important for me to show that poetry could appear on this world, in this world.
Absolutely. I think, yeah, that really came through, and I really enjoyed the magic realism element throughout. So with the performance, with the prison, with nature, with the forest surrounding the prison. And I really also like how you used reality and magic together throughout. So for example, there's a lot of real people, right? Yaku le Chinois being a kind of element figure. Zama King, Roman actually was a tradition. And you mentioned in some of your interviews about Gabriel Garcia Marquez being an influence too. And for me, thinking back on my time in Abidjan, you can't escape magic realism there. You can't, like...
It's not possible.
It's not, it walks into your house, it leaves, it's there, it's all the time. And also, I think the natural element is really important, part of that magic realism. So I remember, you know, we trained what to do when we saw a snake or a poisonous frog that killed my dog one day, or like, you know, I think... or even the sounds around you. We had a big calabash tree in the garden, and when it fell, the kind of music that makes. So yeah, I guess I'd like to ask you how magic realism influences your work, influenced the film, and how particular it is in La Côte d'Ivoire.
Yeah, thank you. Magical realism, it's a term. I like it because of Gabriel Garcia Marquez, but also Salman Rushdie. It's a universal term. So and we can say that it's today. I will say that magical realism is the term for another culture, for non-Occidental culture. Everything is not a point A to point B. It's not direct. It's not one way. It's not unique. It's not a unique view. We have we have in this world, we have a lot of different views. And African, contemporary Africa today, we want to say our view. But when I am in Europe, I speak about magical realism. But when I am in Ivory Coast, there is no magical realism. Everything is our reality. Yeah. It's our reality. Yeah. In our culture, in my culture, the border between magical things, realistic things, dead people, alive people, invisible things, visible things. This border is very fine, and we cross it very, very easily. It's our way to live. It's our way to. It's our perception of our environment, and we have different levels of reality in the same time. Yeah.
Yeah, I remember vividly having a conversation with the school guard one day. I was like, "What's that necklace you're wearing?" And he's this gris, and he started explaining how it would protect him from everything, and bullets couldn't pass it, and just I was like, "Wow, it's amazing." And you just build it into your day-to-day life. That it's not, as you say, separate. It's just
but you have
reality
it.
Is magic.
Yeah, you have it in Night of the Kings when Zama is ready to follow rebels, political rebels, and his father gave him something, a mystical things to protect him. Yeah. So it's our life. We can't separate mystical things, magical things, and realistic things.
Yeah, I remember a friend of my mom taking me to Coco di Marché, and she was buying beads, and she's like, no, not these ones. And she said, obviously, some special thing because the lady brought out the proper beads with like protection and spells, and it's incredible memories of Abidjan. So relating to perspective, I also find it's really interesting how your film treats time and space. So it's all happening over this one night, but then you have this kind of mystical realm with the queen and her brother. It's not linear. There's no borders. There's no A to B, like you said. And even how the cameras work, it's not like we're watching a film necessarily, but we're kind of wrapped into the story, so we feel uncomfortable when you're like, oh, is he gonna die if he doesn't tell the story? Or how you use time and space in the film, I'd like you to tell us about, please.
It was particular in Night of the Kings because prison is a special place. It's a special space, and when as a visitor, I visited a lot of prison, and when a little this space, you know that it's not a free space, because if you are a prisoner, you can't go everywhere in this prison at any time. It's not possible. So to give freedom, to liberate my space, I put off very quickly all this administration and guards. So my prisoners are masters of their space, who is not usual in a prison. And after I decided to tell the story in one night, so it's like a Greek tragedy, a sort of Greek tragedy. But when you have everything in the same time, if you need to move by space, you need to move by characters. So I have different private moments with different characters, with Blackbird, with Roman, with Sexy, and by this way you can move in the story. But it was not easy to write it. It was a sort of challenge we wanted to make this space very realistic, and we didn't shoot in La Maca. We shoot the exterior at the beginning in La Maca, around La Maca, and after we rebuilt La Maca, we built our construction, our set. But I used, as you said before, I used all my drawings on walls are real drawings, comes from different prisons. All these words you can see on walls comes from a real prison. And I didn't want to have the place of a camera. I didn't want to voyeurism. We say it in way.
Voyeurism.
I didn't want to say, okay, now we will make a beautiful image, a beautiful frame about prisoners. No, it's like I wanted to be inside. I wanted to be inside, like there is no camera. There is no camera. You have only a window. You open this window and you are in La Maca. It was important for me not to have a distance with these prisoners, not to make something beautiful about these prisoners.
Yeah, I think it's really interesting how your cast are a lot of former prisoners as well. And I used to intern at the Theater of the Oppressed in Brazil, and I always found it really interesting because there was this concept of not, good and bad, that everything's complex, everything's subtle. And a lot of the times there are theater workshops that are taken into prisons. And so the prison guards will be, doing theater workshops with the prisoners themselves and creating together. So I'm curious as a theater practitioner as to how you ran those 2 months of workshops with your cast, because when Roman is telling the story, the way, the movement, the dance, the poetry, the way they all tell a bit of the story as well, I'd like to hear a bit about that process of how you brought the cast together as an ensemble.
Yeah. First, I will say that we spent 2 years with my casting director, with Ivorian, Johan Richemont. We spent 2 years and we met maybe 2,000 young people in different suburbs of Abidjan. And
Wow.
finally, we selected 40 young people, young men, principally, in majority. And we made this workshop. There was martial art fighters, dancers, singers, griots, young actors. And during this workshop, before this workshop, nobody has his role, nobody has his character. It was a common workshop. And during this workshop, we observed what's happened. We tried to define all this choreography about Scorpio, about dancers, because they are very good dancers, and but everything was written in the script, so it was a way to find. And also with Laetitia Key, with an artist performer who plays the queen. She comes with a sculpture of earth, and she works a lot to define a choreography during the fight, the mystical fight. So the workshop was like this. Progressively, something appears, and character and we precise different characters. And at the end of the workshop, I decided that Roman Bakary Koné will be Roman, because I got a strong relation with him without words. And it was not a problem for me that it is his first time to play, because when Roman, the character in the film, arrived in this prison, he doesn't know how to tell a story. So Bakary Koné was in the same trajectory of the character he will play. So we use it. And I didn't want to have a circle of dancers, of performers. I wanted first to have prisoners, and progressively these prisoners will become dancers. So we try to define everything, but we try to keep a sort of the feeling of improvisation.
No, it felt really natural. It felt really collaborative. The cast felt really like soudé, like they worked together for It was not even that they were working, that they were just being. That really came across in the film. So in terms of so many elements, inspirations came from Côte d'Ivoire, from it being in Côte d'Ivoire, from the multicultural animist space that Côte d'Ivoire is. I guess I'm interested in how you feel about the scene there now, the art that you're seeing come out, the films that you're seeing, the I guess your your impressions of the current and hopes for the future film scene in La Côte d'Ivoire.
Yeah, according what we said before, this multicultural place, Ivory Coast is very rich in terms of artistic influence, artistic practice. So there's a lot of dancers, there's a lot of young actors who are very powerful. In terms of cinema, we have not a real film industry in Ivory Coast. We have a history of cinema. We have 10 directors who were very important. We have a history of cinema. Roger Nwambala, Désiré Carré, Henri Duparc. There is a lot of directors who are important. But we entered in a political conflict and military conflict during 10 years. So now it's a new start with cinema. And most of the young directors, they work in TV series. But when I think about cinema in Ivory Coast, I prefer to think in terms of West Africa. I'm very confident with West African cinema because there's new voices today. And African cinema, you have Mati Diop, you have
Atlantique.
Atlantic, Alain Gomis will continue his work, but you are in Africa, not in West Africa, but in Africa. Jeremiah Mosese from Lesotho, who is a very talented director and who is a friend. And so we discussed together. I will say that there's a sort of new storytelling, including more our culture. Our realities.
No, I was really, I found your film really touching, really beautiful, and really powerful in that it's own stories. It's all these different cultures. It's it's not magical realism. It's just reality that is magic and that is in that space. How you really had these personal connections to the prison. I thought it was really beautiful. So it's coming out this Friday with Altitude Films, July 23rd. And what, if any, hopes do you have in terms of the effect it has on people or the effect it has on young Ivorian directors and actors and performers or representation? You speak on African stories, you feature a transgender character, which was really important in the fact that there's not much representation all over Africa for transgender communities. What are your hopes for the film? What do you want the legacy of the film to be?
My hope for we got a lot of things with this film because we made the premiere at Venice. We got a prize in Toronto. We were in the short list of Oscars competition. But I will say that the main thing for me today is to bring the reality, the modernity of Africa to people who live in Europe. And when I say people who live in Europe, I speak especially about Black people, Black community from everywhere. I presented this film in US, and all these African American, they recognize something in this film. So I think it's a film for Black people.
It's a beautiful film. Thank you so much for your time today, and really wonderful to talk to you.
Thank you.